Hey folks, what's happening? Scott Fischer here, and this month on Fischer Paints we're going to talk about this painting right here, which is the Sylvan Tutor painting from the new Magic the Gathering expansion, Bloomburrow, which was such a beautiful set. You guys should check it out if you haven't. So stoked to do this. Sylvan Tutor is a very known card, been around for a while. It was my pleasure. This is a 16 by 20 painting though, which is sort of small for me. But we had a good time with it, and we tried to pack a lot of punch in these tiny little fur balls and slime balls, I guess? I don't really know. Let's get into it. All right, here's a scan of the final painting, but of course we got to go back in time. Let's hop in that time machine and go back. I'm hanging out in the Sheraton Hotel, and you know those free pads of paper they have with their little ballpoint pens? That's when I got the assignment, and I just started sketching and doodling as many raccoons and frogs as I could possibly muster. Of course, we took that and we put together our thumbnail drawings, which we sent off to the company, which are here. Man, I liked them both. I had a good time. The one on the right is kind of in that little pad you saw, but I like the one on the left a lot more, and I started even, and thank goodness they chose that one. So we went ahead and we did the final drawing based on that. But you know, we had to do a lot of research for this. We had to look at a lot of plants. We're talking all kinds of flowers, Queen Anne's lace, lily pads, but this was really helpful, which is like a Walmart fake lily pad thing, but it simplified the shapes of the flowers so much for me that I actually found it very beneficial for designing the final look of it in the sketch you see on the left. But of course, we had to worry about the animals as well. I don't draw a lot of animals, so I had to do my homework. Lots of frogs we looked at, raccoons all day long. Yes, this raccoon, no, not that version. That's actually the wrong version. I was really a fan of this version, which is the Mike Mignola Rocket Raccoon comic book from the 80s, which I had and I loved and was my favorite comic book. So I was really thinking about Mignola when I did this drawing. But after we got that done and got it mounted on the panel, we went ahead and started painting. We got acrylic washes going on here with a little bit of medium and a little bit of acrylic paint. Went in with those pinks first, smushed it all over the place. I had an idea of where the color was going to go based on the little thumbnail you had seen earlier, but I just washed in a ton of, you know, abstract, ambiguous kind of color over this thing so that I could go for it with the oil paint, which we are doing here. Oil paint is out and I'm cutting straight in. So everything from this point on is going to be oil paint, and I'm just knocking in my negative space. You notice how I smushed that color outside of the Queen Anne's lace that you see up there? Then I was able to cut it out, and it didn't look like it was just panning up to the edge of that stuff because I reduced that negative space around it. It actually has, I don't know, more of a organic feel. Also, I like where the white paint's slightly translucent and you can see through it. But I also went in on those blue flowers, but I started transitioning stuff. So you can see I added purple right between them, right? I figured you got the blue side, you got the red side, let's do a little purple in between. Now we had to start reestablishing our drawing because I'd ghosted it out with all that acrylic paint. So going in with a little liner brush, I'm redrawing everything, but notice I didn't start with black. I'm going in with a light middle brown value to kind of set up some of these darks. Now you're gonna see me in a second dip into the darker stuff. Here you go, and I'm starting to accent the eyes and stuff. We added a little purple to that brown, and now we're able to go in and continue drawing this stuff. Hitting those highlights pretty fast. I've told you it a million times, it's the middle value. That middle wash I put down, then I went darker, and now I'm going lighter with this liner brush, and it already looks pretty much painted, but so much of the work was that scrub in that I did earlier, and you're gonna see that throughout this entire piece. Establish your middle value for what it is you're painting, go a step darker and a step lighter, and you're gonna be much further along than you would have been if you just slowly did it all the way up from scratch. All right, we're gonna work our way down that uniform a little bit, and notice I transition him into a blue down at his hips. That's because we wanted those weird flowers and lily pad things to poke off of him. We needed to screen him back. So I scumbled that in to that initial acrylic lay-in, and now I'm just going in with more opaque oil paint and knocking it in. Real quick, you missed it, but I did a quick fan brush on there because sometimes I'll paint something with an oil paint and take a dry brush and hit it really quick, which blends things together a little bit more. All right, now we can go a little bit bigger and some bigger shapes. I'm trying to just flat in things like the staff and his sleeve in the background and the little guitar hanging off of his back. Notice I'm flatting in the pinks for the vegetation and stuff. And the teapot, notice I committed to a new color for that teapot that's in the staff. They embed weird items into sticks and stuff, so that's actually a teapot up there. You'll see that resolved in a little bit, trust me. All right, slowly working that up, bringing in more and more white until I can cut out that negative space once again. Cool, all right. So now we're going to zoom in a little bit more, and I'm just slowly going wider and wider because, you know, as you paint in with oil paint, whatever's on your brush is going to mix with whatever's already wet. So I just have to keep dipping it into the white and starting over from the origin point, and it'll blend out once again. And while I got that white in my hand, we'll go ahead and bring up the values in the teapot. But notice, I'm not going anywhere near black with that teapot. I'm keeping it all in pretty high key values, at least at the moment. A little bit darker in a couple of the sweet spots, but we're not going too crazy with it. I don't want to get buzzy over there. I'd rather put my detail in here. See that glaze? This is the important part. That's the wash. Fan brush to smooth it out. Quickly went in with some oil paint, ghosted it out even more with some opacity over the translucent. Once that is established, I can go in and start reestablishing and drawing and reworking on, you know, the line work and all that stuff for the frog's head. But pretty fast you see what's happening here. But that blendy stuff that I did at the beginning, I call it the puke, I just vomited those colors down. That is actually holding this thing together. You do those little accents on top of that, suddenly you have a pretty modeled thing without having to render every square inch of it as you went along by one stroke at a time. The big render happened at the beginning, the big gradient was thrown down, and now I can just cut stuff out and start finding some sweet spots. Those buttery Thomas's nooks and crannies in the middle of that stuff. I'm controlling these values though. Look what I did to the claw hand. It's already gone really dark on the right hand side because I knew I needed it to stand off of what was happening behind. And with that little scumble over his outfit, I'm just doing the same thing I did on the raccoon a second ago. I'm going in with my darker values and I'm reestablishing the drawing. I love putting stripes on things because it really helps you understand how things are rounding out in space. Got a little strange with my scales that are down kind of around the waist, the scale mail or whatever, and it's not the same exact scale everywhere. I like randomizing it a bit. You gotta love a little bit of edge light, and with this piece there's so much bright stuff happening that I can put that edge light right around that hand, right around the edges of his head. Look, on the left of his head it's a bright green, on the right of his head it's a bright blue, so you're bouncing those colors back and forth. There goes again the quick scumble behind the leg. I was trying to figure out how dark I wanted that foot to be based on what was happening behind it, and I chose to make the foot darker than the lily pad stuff that's hanging out behind that foot. That worked out pretty well. And then I just started painting up those lily pads a little bit more. I curled them towards us so I could do a silhouette thing. So you see that big one in the foreground, you're seeing that dark edge in front. Well, I know these lily pads are gonna glow like crazy in a little bit, and it just was helpful for me to almost make like they were glowing inside already before I put the actual glow stuff on there. Going in with that next level of lighter value and knocking in those little tiny specular highlights and little tiny details. See the cross-hatching on the knee? That's another way to build form. I'm kind of cross-hatching across that form, which is building stuff out. I'm just thinking of those interesting chrysanthemum thingies down there as these big balls, and I'm kind of just lighting the center of them. I like that you're not seeing every single petal of this, right? Except the big holes I cut in. Transitioning my color a little bit down to the purple at the bottom, so it's not the same green, green, green everywhere. Trusting my silhouette in those dark spaces that I'm now cutting out with a negative space. Letting that silhouette do a lot of the work for me. Instead of having to render all those mushrooms, I can just let them hang out in their silhouette form. Some abstract stuff in the background. A little bit of spatter there a second ago. Scumbling in those dirty values again, and then going in and same thing I did on the raccoon, same thing I did on the frog. Just redrawing some of that stuff, lighting the inside of that lily pad cup again. And now going around it with the pure white negative space and just cutting out some of those cool shapes in the background. Sort of plant-like strangeness. Notice how I push the pink behind the bottom of the staff there to get it to pop forward, really controlling those values in there. Let's paint the staff. Listen to this gradient on there right away, right? Transitioning to a red at the bottom of the staff, to the blue with the kind of coral that the axe will be made out of. And then I transition that coral up into some more grays. And now I'm just working myself through that gradient. And as I add the oil paint to that gradient, it's mixing with the gradient that's already down there, which is saving me a ton of time. A little bit of extra wood grain kind of details. And even more edge light on the frog. Excellent. Let's go ahead and start designing out the final magic. The idea is that they're communicating to each other through the flowers. So you can see that I've got these green lines, almost like neon, connecting them. Their eyes are glowing, and then it goes from one, and it ping-pongs around until it gets to the other frog, or the frog. And then slowly, I did a big, I set a middle value green first for those lines, and then I started adding more and more white and lighter yellows to the center of them, getting with smaller and smaller brushes until it almost glows like a neon. Let's just address the final little bit of details down at the bottom. This stuff just needed a little bit of clarification. So we're just cleaning up some of the negative spaces behind the Queen's Anne's lace. And working our way behind all that goodness. And once that's done, I go ahead and just poke in those nooks and crannies, those darker values, to make it look like a lot is happening there, even though it's really 2 or 3 values happening there. And there it goes, guys, the final piece on the easel. Actually, I hadn't done the bottom part of that stage. And here again is that final scan for you guys to check out. I love that I cut it out with white negative space. You know, when I first designed it, I was thinking it'd be literal, just in a forest or something. I'm so happy that I went with the graphic because it punched so great on this card. I love how you can see through everything. And it was nice because they actually use this on the packaging for the Bloomburrow stuff. So that's awesome, right? Yeah. All right, guys. Well, again, this set was a riot to work on. I hope they revisit this world soon. I think they will. Everybody seems to love this stuff. And let me just tell you, the art in this, once again, you should check it out. The other artists who worked on this, oh my God, everybody brought their A game. Tons of new artists doing things for this as well. So check it out. And hey, while you're checking it out, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button or whatever, man. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Take care.